Welcome to the world of Carry On. In this series, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at how some of the greatest Carry On films were ever made. In this episode, we're looking at the first Carry On film in colour, Carry On Cruising. But first, let's see who signed up for this cruise. Sid James as Captain Wellington Crowther. Kenneth Williams as First Officer Leonard Marchbanks. Kenneth Connor as Dr. Arthur Bin. Liz Fraser as Glad Trimble. Dilys Leigh as Flo Castle. Esme Cannon as Bridget Madeley. And Lance Percival as Wilfred Haynes, the ship's cook. Carry On Cruising was the sixth Carry On film and the first to be produced in colour. The story itself was based on an original story by Eric Barker, who had appeared in the 1960 Carry On film Carry On Constable. Of course, Eric was no stranger to the written word. The comedian had already 3 novels published by the age of 21, and seen one of his short stories included in P.G. Woodhouse's comic anthology A Century of Humour. From what had started as an idea about a European coach tour holiday, Barker shifted the attention to a cruise liner and delivered a treatment for Carry On at Sea for 1960. However, this was altered to Carry On Sailor or even Cruising at some various point, but it was to focus on Lord Tolsworth's troubled ocean navigation company, and Barker suggested that Miles Malleson, who was never to appear in an actual Carry On film, would star in the starring role as Tolsworth, Charles Hawtrey as the seaman Leonard Tolls, and Sid James as the tough sea dog Sid Jackson. However, the idea didn't really come about, and Peter Rogers decided to bring in Norman Hudis, who was already the regular Carry On writer. He was paid just $7,500 to adapt Eric Barker's basic idea of a cruise liner and make it workable for a Carry On tale. Even though the cast was relatively small, there were some old faces, but there were also some very new faces that were about to star in a Carry On for the first time. But before we get to the new faces, there were trouble with the old faces. Charles Hawtrey, who had expressed concern about his billing from the previous film, Carry On Regardless, demanded the top spot for this new film, as well as a star on his dressing room door. This of course angered producer Peter Rogers, who wasn't having any of it. Director Gerald Thomas later explained it was a very difficult situation, but with the best will in the world, we could just not bill him above Sid James. Sadly, Hawtrey missed the film, and it was the only film he missed in his 23 film run. However, the replacement for him was Seasick Sea Cook Wilfred Haynes, which was played by Lance Percival, his only Carry On appearance. Another Carry On regular at the time, Joan Sims, was also out of the cast. The official reasoning was physical exhaustion after a lengthy run in the West End with The Lord Chamberlain Regrets. Her role of course was given to Dilys Leigh, who would go on to appear in several more Carry On films during the years. Kenneth Williams nearly missed a film as well. Although amazed at the offered fee for Carry On Sergeant with the success of 4 further Carry On films under his belt, the actor believed the salary should be slightly increased. A big Carry On no-no. However, Gerald Thomas listened to his request and advised the actor that he would be mad to turn down Carry On Cruising. The money may remain the same, but the film was to be shot during a glamorous Mediterranean cruise. Kenneth jumped at the chance, and despite initial plans to film in Gibraltar, the only filming location took place on the 18th of December 1961 at Tilbury Docks. No actors were required, and the rest of the film was shot on stages A and B at Pinewood Studios. Of course, the studio set looked pretty convincing on camera, and to the average viewer, you'd think that they were really at Southend-on-Sea. However, despite that, the set was made with an enormous swimming pool, set into the floor of the soundstage. With the maximum depth of over 6 foot, an experienced swimmer had to be on hand in case non-swimmers like Esme Cannon needed assistance. The sound mixer also installed an operational wireless on the set to give it more authenticity. However, Gerald Thomas didn't even try and pretend that the action wasn't actually filmed aboard a real ship. In fact, Lance Percival's character at one point during the film says these stabilisers are absolutely wonderful. So let's take a look at what Carry On Cruising was all about. Captain Crowther has 5 crew replaced at short notice before a new cruise voyage begins. Not only does he get the 5 most incompetent men ever to sail the 7 seas, but the Passions turn out to be rather a strange bunch too. The SS Happy Wanderer is the cruise ship, and after this voyage, Crowther hopes to get a job as a captain on a transatlantic ship, promising the cruise crew members their jobs will be safe under a new captain. Setting off from England, the Happy Wanderer calls at named ports in Spain, Italy and of course North Africa before heading home. Single ladies aboard, Gladys and Flo, take to the cruise. Flo hoping to find a husband. There's also Bridget Madeley aboard, a dotty and entertaining, unusual kind of lady. Along with that, there's an unnamed passenger who never disbarks himself from the ship's bar. He's just drunk 90% of the film. However, the crew of the Passions settles in for the ship as it leaves port, and head chef Wilfred Haynes discovers he gets easily seasick and quite often have to rely on Dr. Arthur Bin to sort him out. Meanwhile, Gladys and Flo fall for the PT instructor, Mr. Jenkins, but really nothing comes of it, especially when Flo turns out to be hopeless in the actual gym. Meanwhile, the new men try to impress Crowther, but disaster follows disaster, with him getting knocked out and covered with food at a party. Meanwhile, ship's doctor, Dr. Bin, has fallen for Flo, but she wants nothing to do with him, so he serenades her with a lovely little song, Bella Marie, which she does not hear because she's asleep. Instead, he plays it to the rather drunk Ronnie Stevens. This, of course, hears this song and then realises that she could bring the two together with the help of First Officer March Banks. They arrange a plot for Bin and Flo to get together. It works, and the confident Bin finally confesses his feelings for a gobsmacked Flo, who returns his affections. Crowther lets the 5 newcomers know that they've improved since the cruise begun, simply by doing their jobs and not trying to impress him. They subsequently learn that Crowther has been in charge of the Happy Wanderer for 10 years and decide to hold a surprise party for him. Haynes bakes him a multi-flavoured cake, and the barman cables for the former barman for a recipe of the captain's favourite drink, the Aberdeen Angus. The party goes well, and Crowther gets a telegram telling him that his captaincy of the new ship is in full swing. However, he turns it down after he recognises that he doesn't have to have that personal touch of a cruise ship and prefers the company of his own crew. Carry On Cruising was filmed between the 8th of January to the 16th of February 1962 and was the 12th most popular film at the British box office that year. Returns from the film was very successful and considered a moneymaker. So what do we think of Carry On Cruising? It's one of those carry-on films that you might consider a bit of a Marmite film. You either love it or you hate it. For me, it's somewhere in the middle of those two. This film doesn't seem to grab the essence of maybe the previous film. It lacks a bit of depth, and maybe the story just isn't quite as good as maybe the previous ones. However, it is a very easy and fun film to watch, especially if you're a newcomer to the Carry On series. Of course, the Carry On films at this point weren't very bold at all. They were still getting U certificates at the cinema, so these were quite tame compared to what we would get later. So the priceless innuendo and the double entendres wasn't as present as with the later films. So for me, Carry On Cruising sits somewhere in the middle. It's neither good, it's neither bad, but it does hold up as an averagely good Carry On film. So from me, until next time, don't forget to carry on laughing.